Welcome. I'm Suzan Kessel with the Fairfield Art Association, and we're here today for the closing of Deb Scott's wonderful exhibit that's been here in the main gallery at the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. It's been here 3 months, and it's been a delight. I've heard it called a favorite show.
Oh, thank you.
So this is Deb Scott, and you are from?
Lowell, Iowa.
Little town of Lowell.
Little village on the Skunk River, 24 houses.
24 houses. And the title of the show was Souls of the Skunk River. So it was, we have a few wall pieces on the wall, pastel, but predominantly we have these sculptures, and they're done of clay.
Clay, yes. Clay that I take and mold into the head, and then I fire it, and then it has to dry for several months. Then I fire it again, and I paint them with oxides from Bulgaria. And oxides are simply different ground clays, rocks, dirt, and but I like the effect that they give.
Well, these are amazing. I hope that you have another show somewhere and someone will come and see these, because we did sell 2.
Yes.
And that we don't always sell things. But tell us about this one. This is one of your first pieces.
Yes, this is kind of how it started. I started making a coil pot, and I thought, I wonder what this would be like as a head. And I call him Pete the Pothead. And if you take off his mullet, he's a stash jar. And so it started with Pete, and Pete has a terrible skin condition, but he does brush his teeth voraciously. The rest of his hygiene is not so great.
I remember you told a story about this being somewhere, and
had him in a show in Burlington, and there were 2 beat cops that were walking, and they came in and they were looking at the show, and they go, what's with this Pete the Pothead? And I said, well, he's a stash jar. And I said, it's okay, there's nothing in him. And they said, well, we have the drug dog out in the car, we can bring him in. And I said, no, that's okay. And he had this large roach with him. And so they were quite taken with Pete the Pothead. They thought he was very interesting.
so this was your first piece.
This was the first head it started with.
Okay, we're going to look at the ones as we go around the room, and tell us about this one.
This is Field and Smitty Minges, and I took a class in blacksmithing, and that's kind of what got me on the idea of I should make a guy who's a blacksmith. And when I do this stuff, I kind of look for additives, things to put with them, and I kind of do some of the research on the history of it. So Fielding, nice guy, he's a man's man, he loves to laugh, his whole face laughs with him, but he wasn't having a very good time with the women until he went to the shadier side of town, because they don't ask for conversation from him. So, yeah, that's Fielding.
So these are not real people.
No.
They're your real people.
They're my real people, and when I started out, I wanted to keep all of them. I have over 50-some heads, and I didn't at all want to sell them because, I don't know, they just become like a part of my family, and I'm passionate about them, but it wasn't very realistic. I live in a small place. It was a grist mill, Buddy Renner's grist mill in the late 1800s. Sounds very romantic, but basically it's sort of a cabin barn looking dwelling, not near big enough to have 50 heads in it. So I did break down and start selling them.
Well, we're taping this right before Halloween. I can imagine when you get these home and you have them around the house and you walk through the house, I would be going, at every tour.
Yeah. I did have a thought when I was first making them. I thought, what if I took some of these and buried them? And then somebody dug them up 100 years from now, what in the world would they think? Yeah.
They'd have quite a story.
Yes.
And talking about stories, each one, you have a story about each person.
Yes.
Very detailed and describing his life. So they're really interesting, really fun.
A lot of the things come to me at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning is kind of my idea time, and I'll wake up and I'll just have an idea. Sometimes I know what I'm going to do when I sit down to do it, and the story evolves with it, and other times I will be making a head. I was doing a figure, and it was going to be sort of a beer belly man. And as I'm going on, it hit me, no, this is a woman who's had both breasts removed from breast cancer. And so I made her, and so she's naked, and it shows her scars, and she's 7 months pregnant, and she's so excited that in 2 months she's going to meet her son. After all the chemo and all of the radiation and everything, she didn't know she could conceive.
Do you write notes as they come to you?
I do.
Good.
I do write notes.
I know that early in the morning thing when you get up, and I write notes.
I keep a lot of ideas on my phone, and I will see things or I will hear something, and then that will lead me to something else. So yeah, it's kind of a process, and I do try to look up things about it so that I'm somewhat historically accurate about different parts of their lives.
So you started out as an artist, pastel wall pieces?
Yes, I was doing a lot of watercolors is my favorite, and then pastels and oils. And I've kind of always dabbled in that, but I've never had any formal training. So like when I do a sculpture, I know that there's rules about where you place things on the face and stuff, but I don't retain them. So I build a head, and if something looks off, and if I think the ears aren't in the right spot, I just cut them off and move them. And so I just keep doing things until it looks right, it feels right to me.
I think that's the way to go, and rules are made to be broken.
Yeah.
So let's come over here and tell us about this piece.
This guy is a outdoorsman. His name is Creed, and he was being abused at home, and he is blind in one eye from a beating from his father. And he decided that he would rather take chances on surviving in the wild than to stay home and be ill-treated. So he did steal some things from the family larder, and he took off on foot. But fortunately, he wound up with a mountain man named Cobb. And Cobb taught him how to trap and how to live off the land. And so, yeah, with him, he has some of his bone tools. He has some different roots, some chicory root, some turkey's tail for tea, which is very medicinal. And he has his powder horn. And then Cobb, his saddest day, Creed's saddest day, was when he had to lay Cobb to rest in a makeshift grave in a small clearing by the crystal clear stream. He took Cobb's worn Bible and he read some comforting words over his grave, hung his fur hat over the cross made of sticks, and said goodbye to his mentor and friend.
I love that you also have these codes.
These codes, some people, and in some things, when the artist is actually talking about their work, they're a little more passionate and involved than anyone else. And so these, if you use your iPhone and go to that, it has a recording of me reading their story. And so that's kind of a nice touch.
That is a very nice touch. And is this a house
This
somewhere?
is a house in Bentonsport. I call it the Martin House just because of the Martin in there, but I did that one plein air.
Very nice. And down below we have an artist, but let's come over here. And how about if we come back here and we'll talk about them. This one is, who is this?
This is Rintha Beck. And Rintha always has believed that she was stood up at the altar because Moaz didn't show up. And so every year on the anniversary of that happening, she puts on her aged wedding veil and curls into the fetal position and mourns all over again. But what she doesn't realize is that Moaz was not standing her up. He was on his way to the wedding, and she doesn't know that because people said that they had several sightings of him in different places, but it wasn't. His last words was, "My love, Rintha," on his lips.
And this lady, it is a lady.
Yes. This is Biddy Connor, and Biddy was a mean old woman. okay? She was loved by no one. She smoked old stogies. She didn't have a tooth in her head. She drank rot gut. And her breath was disgusting. No one ever offered her help when there was huge snows or limbs down, no one, because she was so mean. And she even scolded the birds that would land in her trees. She was mean to them. She was just a mean old bitch. And so when she passed away, they discovered, it was like a couple weeks before they discovered, and they found out that basically when they went in, that she was as rotten on the outside as she was on the inside. And so when they were cleaning out her home, they found this box, and in this box was this moth-eaten baby outfit with a bonnet and shoes, and in her handwriting it said, "In memory of Linda Lou."
Oh, right there.
And
very detailed. And you search for just the right item to go with the character.
yes, and sometimes I may have everything done, but I don't have just the right things to go with them, so I don't put them out until I do. It's a process.
Let's back up a tiny bit, and we'll come over here to this stack of characters. We'll start at the top. There's a horseshoe in there.
Yes, this is Rectainer Treadwell, and he had been called so many names as a young man, and he grew up and he married and he had all these kids, and the kids were constantly sticking their noses up to the windows of other people's homes and stuff, and they had an old horse in their yard. Now they could hardly feed their kids, so why they had an old horse, I do not know. But the horse bit one of the kids, picked him up, bit him in the stomach, left an incredible bruise. Well, when they took the youngster to the doctor, they were also talking about the birth control pills that they had put her on, because he says, "We need more, we've run out." And they said, "Well, that was a month's supply." And he says, "Well, I've been taking them too." So Rectainer wasn't known to be incredibly bright.
Oh dear. And then we move down to this guy.
This is M.E.J. Beck, Montrose Evron Joseph Beck, and he's an undertaker. And he, have an actual picture of a funeral. And his story is about one of the funerals that he was taking care of, and it talks about Hattie was the layer out. She was the one who put out the dishes of vinegar to help cover up the smell. Because in about 2 or 3 days of this process of them being laid out, there were odors. Very strong coffee was made, and she was in charge of that. And the occasion that happened with this was they had it was a man that had passed. He was a large, portly man. And they brought them in through a death door, because in the old Victorian homes, you didn't want people coming in and out. The deceased wasn't to come in and out the regular doors, so they had actual death doors. And luckily, they were able to get him through it, because he was a big guy. And when they put him out for the family and friends, and then they called the widow in, he had an erect flute. And so she screams and passes out, and he has to come in and explain to them that this is an occurrence that happens. And then when he's in his wagon on the way home, he's saying, "I didn't think the old boy had it in him." This is a pastel that I did of a fall scene.
And I know I asked you if you have ever taught painting or anything, and you said no.
I haven't.
But I have this theory that sometimes you can be authentic when you don't have been taught all these words and things to do, and like your creations here show that very well. It's coming out of you, it's flowing out, and sometimes you don't need to be told what to do.
Yeah.
So let's come over here and tell me about this piece.
This is Murphia, and Murphia had always been considered homely. You know, she was called Horseface. She overheard some people calling her that, and so she took a status of herself in the mirror and thought, you know what, I am not that bad. So she was out of town, And so she went to a mask ball. And so she left her gritty little town and went to this mask ball, and she is hoping that she will find a man tonight.
Well, what's ever under that mask, they're going to be surprised. Oh, this, what in the world is this?
Okay, this is Rubbe. And so I got to admit that when I was growing up, my dad worked on the railroad, and he found there was a mother possum that had been hit by a train. And so on the second day, he decided he would bury her. So when he went to bury her, he saw something crawling. And it was just a little pink thing like that. The back legs weren't even entirely formed that had come out of her pouch. So he put it in a coffee can in an old hanky of his, and he brought it home to me. I was so excited. So I fed that thing.
So this is a true story.
This is a true story about raising a possum.
And you
I used
fed
an
it with this eyedropper.
And I used watered down carnation's milk because when I was growing up, we didn't go to the vet. We had home remedies for everything. But my parents were very eclectic about animals and about the way that we lived. And so I raised my possum. My possum could whip any dog on the block. And I would take him on walks and everything. The only thing you had to be careful of is they use the sense of smell and not sight. So if you held food up there, you wanted to watch your fingers because he was going to be quick to get it. Well, this is a guy that did basically the same thing. This is Rubbe, and Rubbe raised this possum. And it really fulfilled his life. It filled a hole that was there that he needed filled. And the sad part is that the DNR authorities knocked on his door one day and said that he had to get rid of the possum. They were going to let it loose. And the part of the story is that everyone says that Rubbe's face after that showed loss every day. Thank God Rubbe never heard about the farmer that shot a possum that climbed up his leg and hung on his shoulder. Damn thing had to be rabbit, he told his neighbors, because the possum was so tame and that was what he was used to doing with him. So yeah, that was part of an experience that I had growing up.
Okay, so lots of real life stories.
Little bit. Somebody said one time, they said, do you realize that there is a little bit of you in every one of these people? So I suppose that there's some part of that that's true. Even though it's things that I made up and these people don't really exist, there's still a part in there that comes from me.
And they're wonderful pieces. I'm so excited to have this. And the 3 months that it was here just flew by. I can hardly believe it.
It did.
Interesting piece here.
Yes, this is Umphrey. And Umphrey drove an old pickup truck, and he rolled his own cigarettes. I don't know why, but I have this thing where I don't even smoke myself, but I love them to have cigarettes. I love them to have cigars.
Is this a real?
That is. That's a real, yes.
Roller.
And I remember growing up, a friend of mine, her mom would roll her own. And you put the paper in there and you lay the tobacco out and you pull this back and it rolls the cigarette. Yeah.
Okay.
And he likes to put a little bit of aromatic pipe tobacco in his. And so he picks up this widow lady for church. He doesn't go in, but he sits out there. He loves listening to the singers out there, and he loves listening to the fire and brimstone of the preacher and the coming bad times and all of the sinners. And every single day when they leave, he asks the widow if she will walk around Gladen Pond with him, and she always declines. And he was so used to hearing that he missed the turn before he realized this Sunday she had said yes. He skidded a bit on the gravel, threw his truck into reverse, rounded the turn to the pond. When he took her hand to help her from the truck, she didn't pull away. She kept her hand in his. To Umphrey, the warm spring air got even sweeter.
Oh, so do you stick with a story? Do you ever change it?
Oh, I do change them.
You do change
yes.
them? Mm-hmm. So even like that person could change into somebody else?
Well, no. Once they're done like that.
That's who they are.
But during the process, I have changed them before.
Okay.
In fact, back on this one of the gal that got stood up at the altar, my friends could not stand that not knowing what happened to Moaz. So only for them, I wrote the rest of the story about what actually happened to him.
Oh my goodness. I'm just amazed at all this. I'm going to move over here, but you can go close to that guy and tell me.
Yeah, this guy
about
here,
him.
this is Leonard. And Leonard cleaned a dentist's office, and he pilfered things from there. And so, like, he would steal things that he didn't think were going to be noticed, like these teeth impressions and the thing that you put in their mouth when they bite down to make the impressions and stuff. And he kept these things in a cigar box. And he loved taking these out. And his palms would get sweaty, and he'd take them out to look at them. But he had no relationship with women. And he did think sometimes that he wished that he could keep them in a box like his dentistry thing. And he swore to himself that it wasn't a sexual thing. It was just the excitement of having a secret. And he did his best when he took his meds daily. And he had started being obsessive in his teens. He would only eat condiments, and he would only eat them off little plastic lids. And so he overcame one eccentricity to develop another. But his latest therapist, the one that he has right now, he's connecting to, and he really feels hope for the first time in his life.
I could see a dentist wanting to purchase this and put it in their shop just because it's so interesting. Maybe they wouldn't like it, but I think it's
one thing about it, when I make things, I don't make them for anyone other than myself. I'm not looking at it, I don't make something and think, well, a lot of people would like this, or this might sell. I make it because it's something I got to get out of me.
That would take away from what you're doing if you're trying to portray a certain person.
I think of it kind of like my therapy. There's all these things in there, and so I've got to find a healthy way.
And this next guy is...
This is Emmett. Emmett's a photographer, really disgusted kind of with the world. He started out thinking that by taking his black and white photos that he was going to change how things were happening and certain injustices with the world and stuff, but he's kind of given up. So he's an angry man. Sometimes he doesn't even know exactly why he's so angry, but he is a very angry man. It's eating away at him like a cancer.
And where did you find the camera?
I'm in like a vintage shop.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you go on a search.
I do. And sometimes I get a lot of money wrapped up into the things, because if I find something and I feel like it's just perfect, I don't want to settle for something else.
I can see where that would, going into antique stores and finding treasures, you can envision, who did this belong to? I wonder if this was a really old lady that was by herself and she just kept this because she had to have it.
It's those personal items that you can imagine a person using every day that really, to me, make it. You know, their cigar holders and the things that...
And this is?
That's hair Invigorator, because you can see that he's starting to lose his hair and he's doing a bit of a comb over. And so this is supposed to invigorate the growing of your hair.
Okay, fits nicely with him.
Yes.
Now this is a strange person here.
This little gal here is Blinker, and she was always a tomboy, and she was always boxing with Dieter. And her grandpa was upset because she comes in with another black eye. And so he told her to go up in the attic and get his old boxing gloves. And these boxing gloves have a lead bar in them. And he told her, he said, if you're going to play this way with these boys, you're going to learn how to fight them. And so he taught her. And he says a lot of words. She loves it because he gets all excited and he does this little jig and he says words that she's not allowed to say. So she ended up having a fight with Dieter, and she split his nose open. And the end of the story is about how she looked at Dieter's handsome face. Her eyes rested on the twist and the crook of his broken nose, because she can't wait to say I do to him, because they ended up getting married.
Oh my goodness.
After being childhood fighters.
I could tell a story probably about her age, 6th grade, and I had a friend, a guy, and for some reason I said, let's fight. And it's like, I did that. And he goes, no, 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 I can't do that. My dad would be mad. And I go, yeah, I want to fight. I was a tomboy. So he punched me, and I got a bloody nose.
Oh.
And his dad come running out of the house, and he got in trouble, and I felt terrible. But a real character.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Hopefully I'm not a part of any more of these. This is Arlo.
This is Arlo. Arlo has inverted nipples. Okay, that's a family trait that runs in his family. And his resting face always has the look as if he is sucking on lemon drops. But his job is to help kids onto the back of an elephant. They go up this rickety ladder, and he leads the elephant around. And so he's always carrying this lingering odor of elephant dung.
I think when we get done with this show, we could have a comedy show that we could put out there, and you'd be world famous. And speaking of world famous and things, strange things.
Oh, yeah, this
has got a story to it.
I inherited this from my father. He wore this every day of his life. He was quite a character. And this is a coon cock. And he said that this was for good luck. And he would always say, not so much for the coon, but good luck for me. So yeah, I wear this all the time. I have several. He left, I have 3 sisters, and he left coon cocks to them, but for some reason they didn't want theirs. So I got them all.
That is very interesting.
Yes.
I never knew there was such a thing.
Yes, certain animals have a bone in their penis, and the raccoon happens to be one of those.
Okay. You're getting a lot of information that you didn't know. This lady.
This is one of my favorites. This is Gretty, and Gretty has a sow, and she goes around and digs up the mushrooms that, what do they call them?
Oh, I know what you mean. They're really delicacies.
Yes, they are, and pigs can smell them
Yes.
really well.
It looks like it's been in the hog lot here. And her hair is very...
This is actual hair from a curly sheep.
Okay.
And so she goes out and she takes the sow, and the sow finds the mushroom under the ground, and then Gretty gets her away and harvests it. And then she always says that she has to share because only a real scoundrel wouldn't share with their partner. But the thing about Gretty is that she's coming up to, it's a truffles. I could not think of the word. So when she sees Pearl is her hog, and Pearl runs up, and it's a log with some white fungus on it and everything. But when she gets up there, she can tell that it is not a log. It is a foot, a skeletonized foot coming out of the ground with what's left of a leather boot on the foot. And so she knows that somebody's done something silly and got themselves killed. But she does not want strangers on her land. So she gets Pearl going in the other direction, and she mutters to herself, I wonder how long I'll have to stay away from this part of the forest, and because she's not telling anybody, but there's a body
I think you
buried
could
there.
write for TV shows.
I want to do a book
real big
sometime.
storyline.
I want to do a book where I have like my head on one side and then the story, and do a book of all my heads. I would love to do that
I
sometime.
think you should.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got another stack here. Starting, let's start at the top.
This is Keziah Griffith, and he has different kinds of eggs in here because that's a lot of his diet is eating these eggs. And he lives in a lighthouse. He likes the solitude, and he can eat the eggs and the meat of local birds. He's lost count of the different times that he's had to row out and save the different sailors. He feels like he's at one with the lighthouse, and he can feel the pulse and the beacon of the light, and he knows that he would never leave, not alive anyway.
Again, the character fits the story. All those little eggs. I mean,
Those are real.
whoa, these are real.
Uh-huh. Those are real eggs. This is Cordelia. Cordelia is a busker and plays the spoons. She ran away from a bad situation, and she was in court-appointed homes, and so she went to the streets. And she was taken under the wing of Farley Morris, which was also a street busker. And Farley heard her tapping to the beat of his harmonica and told her and taught her how to play the spoons. And then she hooked up with a guy, and her grandchildren love to listen to her tales of street performing and how she met Papa Gitz, because Papa Gitz is her husband and their grandfather.
All right, now this guy's got his tongue out.
This is an actress, and her name is Rubbe, and she was looking at the cast list, and that's what made her stick her tongue out like this, because the one that she is going to be the lead against this other guy, they had a really bad experience. And everybody said they were perfect for each other, and she says she had stopped in on a Sunday, and because they were needing help getting some things painted for one of the productions, and she says she ran into a production, all right, Ralph's bare bum between the scrawny legs of Sheila, toes pointed upward as if reaching for the sun. And so then she did not want anything to do with him. But she, and this is her, like, it says forever and then put not. But she realized that being an actress is playing a scene. So this will be the greatest role of her life, because she's going to play a love scene against a guy that she can't stand.
And below,
this one, this poor tormented soul. So that's Royce. And Royce has a little bear with him that his mom made. And when Royce was young, he was playing with matches, and he set their cabin on fire, and his mother perished. So he relives that sad story every single night. And so he's forever taunted and tormented about that situation.
now I can't help but look at this sweet little girl, this picture holding a chicken in her hand, and beautifully done, but such a sweet face compared to all these other guys.
No, I know. Like some people say, you know what, it's a little scary, everything that's in there.
Well, I always say when you work in one media, you do things differently than when you work in another media.
Yeah.
But you have captured the faces and the wrinkles and the big teeth and the big ears.
Well, you know, I tell people I have the talent and capacity to make beautiful people. I can do that. But it doesn't interest me. No. I like the people with warts. I like the stories. I like the people who have overcome certain situations or are in the middle of certain situations. I love those types of things. Those are what hold my interest.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This tells a story too. It's a sweet little girl. Mm-hmm. But these are fantastic. This one down here.
She is
she looks like a flapper.
Yes, she is a flapper, and she has the head stuff here that goes with her, of how you put these in your hair to make the waves.
Okay.
And
a little different than these days.
Yeah, and she has a long cigarette holder, and
whoa.
Yeah, and you would put that in the hair,
imagine.
and then you could move it one way or the other and let it dry, and that's how you got the waves in your hair.
That's authentic. Mm-hmm. And over here, this gentleman, he looks a tiny bit like somebody else I
This
just
is
saw.
Minerva. This is a gal.
It's a girl.
Minerva, her husband passed away, and friends and acquaintances would comment and say, man, I bet you really miss Emmer, you know. And she would, you know, go on, yeah, okay. She says, what do I miss? Minerva always nodded in agreement and something to suggest that they were correct. She accepted their pity and maneuvered to a new topic. She couldn't share with them what she truly missed. I miss a warm mouth on mine, gentle, slightly parted lips. I miss man sweat on mine. I miss not body odor, but the salty, musky scent, hot from work in the sun. Fierce gazes, not anger, gazes that you can't turn from. And she goes on to explain all of these things of like a really passionate relationship with someone. And then at the end it says, I miss those things I never had with Emmer, but there was a time. A slight smile rested on Minerva's lips and her eyes slowly shut.
When I first saw this one, and then I saw the name, and I thought, Minerva. I've only known one Minerva in my life, and that is her.
You know, people will come and see my heads and they'll look and they'll go, oh my gosh, I sat behind that person in church, or that's my aunt, or that was my neighbor. So it's kind of cool that people can connect with them in some way.
It is. This is another one. I feel like this could have been Minerva's sister. Is
Yeah.
it Minerva's sister?
No?
No.
I don't think I've made any ones that are related yet.
Okay.
This is Mrs. Cuppy, and she does embroidery and sells embroidery off of her front steps. Yep. She likes to drink tea. And this one down here is really near and dear to my heart. This is Turzy, and Turzy grew up with a squirrel monkey. And I grew up with a squirrel monkey. My sister worked at a bank, and of course this was many, many years ago, and someone had put this monkey as collateral against a small loan and didn't pay, and so my sister paid the money and brought home the monkey, and I named him Cookie.
True story.
True story.
Okay.
And my dad had this, and he cut this out and colored it, and then it was on a pole. And I would go in the Fort Madison Rodeo Parade as an organ grinder, and Cookie would be on my shoulder, and I would be winding this and playing the music, and people would put money in the cup. And so that's the gist of this one. Cookie lived for a long, long time, lived in a cage that my dad built. We had the only heat in the house was an oil burner in the center of the living room. And the cage was right by that, and it had a tree in it, and then it had chicken wire on the outside. And in the winter, when that oil burner would get to heating up the whole house smelled like monkey manure. But he was like...
True story.
Yeah, he was my best friend, because I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers, but I was a late in life child. And so they were all grown and out of the house by the time I came along. And so Cookie was like my sibling.
So this, I'm sure, you're attached to this.
Yeah.
I would be too,
Yeah.
because it's your story.
Yep.
All right, we have another guy over here.
Yeah, this
I just
guy,
have to touch his head.
Zadrock, he raised this little crow. And the crow started bringing him shiny things and stuff. Well, one time the crow landed on the windowsill of a neighbor who then subsequently passed away. So everybody started saying that this crow had some kind of power to make people die, because the neighbors, you all get together, you know, like this. And he says, man, he says, I wish that were true. I'd start a list. But yeah,
I think crows have that kind of history. They like shiny things,
Yes.
and they collect them.
Yes.
And bring them somewhere.
Yeah.
So
I've always wanted a pet crow.
I think my
I've
dad
had a pet possum, I've had a pet raccoon, I had a alligator. In fact, we had a bathroom and all the plaster had come off the walls in the bathroom, so you could just see the lath. And we had a big old clawfoot tub in there. And I would go in and I'd have to take the little alligator out of the tub and put him on the floor and take my bath and then put him back. Because we were never told no about having any animal and raising it.
And that's why you're so creative.
I think that's a lot of it, being raised very eclectic, and parents who were just very interested in all kinds of things. They let me bring in a nest that I found one time. It was a hornet's nest, but a praying mantis had laid its eggs in it. So we woke up one day and there's hundreds and hundreds of praying mantises in the house. And so I'm trying to catch them and take them outside, but we had these drapes that were the plastic drapes, and they would get brittle with the sun, and we just changed them out, you know, every so many years, but those plastic drapes were just covered with those praying mantises. But yeah, nothing was ever taboo.
So some of this reminds me of my grandfather. He was very eclectic and let you do all kinds of things that my parents wouldn't. But,
Oh, yeah.
and my dad always talked about, he wanted a crow and something about cutting its tongue so it could talk. Now, I don't know where that came from.
I don't know, but I've heard that they could be taught to talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slitting or splicing it. Anyway. Okay, another guy over here.
Yeah, this guy here is an alcoholic. His name is Reese. He loves to read Shakespeare. He's fascinated by tadpoles, and he's been known to tote a few of them home in an empty spirit bottle. He'll get down in the mud to look in a puddle to find the tadpoles. Reese kind of lost most of his friends because he was betting all of his friends, girlfriends, and wives. And it's not because he wanted to be a bad person, it's because he did most of his thinking with his little head.
He does have a little head. I just noticed that. And we have one here in this glass case, which you probably, I don't know if you can see because of the glare, but she's got curlers all over her head and an old-fashioned hairdryer.
This is Edna May, and she feels very upset that she's not getting all of Walter Wallace's attention, that there's this red-headed hussy that is trying to get his attention. So she took this red-headed doll and buried it upside down in an anthill to try to ward off the attentions of this other gal. And she's been told this is a real lamb's wool perm, because that's what they used to wrap them in before they started using papers. They used lamb's wool. And so she figures this perm and an aphrodisiac pie should be enough to turn Wallace's attention to her.
Okay, lots of stories here. So I'm sure you have a few heads that we don't have here, and we did sell 2.
Yes.
They've got to be hard to part with,
Yes.
part of the
are.
family.
They are.
And are you continuing to make these?
I am. I have 6 in the process right now. I'm trying something new. I'm making what I call half heads so that I can mount them in frames. So I build a head basically, because I have one way that I build, and I build the head and then I slice it, and I take that half head and I put holes on the sides so it can be wired onto a plywood back, and then put it in the frame, and then put the things that help tell the story onto the frame with it.
So do you ever make heads? You said you slice them in half.
Yes.
Can you just hang them on the wall?
I haven't done that. I think they do better to be put into a frame so that I can put the things that help tell their story.
Right.
Because I think that, I mean, I love my heads, but I think it's that combination of the heads, the heartfelt story, and the things that I put around them that kind of makes the whole package.
Yes.
And so that's my new thing, is making the heads and putting them in frames.
Okay.
So
do you have any shows coming up?
I'm demonstrating, there's a gala in Burlington. It's a fundraiser. It's $125 a seat, and I will be on risers with 2 painters. So I will be making a head, and they will be painting a painting, and then they'll be doing a lot of auctions and things like that as a fundraiser for aftercare from the hospital.
I think I heard about those, and someone was telling me what a great fundraiser to have artists participating and watching them work, and maybe someday we'll do something like that, and I'll call you.
I feel so honored that they asked me. I'm just tickled pink. I love talking about my art. I do. I'm passionate about it.
How long have you been doing the heads?
2 years.
2 years is all.
Yeah.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
Is that like one a month or something? Yikes.
Yeah.
And just have that just keep rolling out of your brain, the characters.
I can't imagine a time when I can't do it, but you know, I don't know. But I try to challenge myself, and so that's like with the half head thing. I like to change it up sometimes and challenge myself to do something a little bit different. And
Well, like I said, I've had numerous people tell me this is one of their favorite shows here.
oh,
And I
that's
think,
so nice.
I think you can go on and have many more.
I have one in 2025 in Fort Madison. I can't remember the month. And then again in Burlington in 2027. But I need to, I'm not really good at promoting myself. I was never going to have a show, and my two friends, Pam and Linda, and then Elizabeth from the Burlington Art Center said, "Oh my gosh, you have got to," and they really, really pushed, and that's why
Well,
finally did
I
it.
think there'll be more people pushing you to have more exhibits like this.
Yeah.
And I wish
Oh,
you all
thank
the
you.
luck.
Oh,
And
thank you
I know,
so much.
I know we're going to be hearing about you big time. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.